All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you about how I got fascinated by ES-335s, the Gibson model ES-335. I went to a summer camp when I was a junior in high school. It was a jazz camp. And I remember I got there, and the guitar instructor, a guy by the name of Mike Irish, I was playing a Tele at the time. I had a white, like 68 Telecaster, and loved that guitar. And he heard me playing, and he was into it. He was like, hey, you know what? If you want to jazz up your blues playing a little bit, you should check out these guys, Larry Carlton and Robin Ford. And they were playing 335s, and he played me a record of some of their offerings, and I immediately identified that beefy, succulent sound of a 335. There was another student there who was my same age, John Schumacher, as a matter of fact, and he had an ES-335 with him. And he had always been pining for a Telecaster, and I was always pining for a 335, or, well, actually, at that point, I was pining for a 335. So we kind of swapped guitars during our ensemble classes and stuff, and played each other's guitar for that week. And I was bound and determined when I returned from camp that I had this factory job. My dad got me, one of his clients, it was production plastics, and I was exposed to, I used to clean out the dyes that they would make for squirting the plastic in. I'd clean them out, brush them off, and stamp on what piece they were and so on and so forth. But I was ceaselessly exposed to plastic. So that probably explains a lot, ladies and gentlemen. Not that I wasn't already a little off then, but I think exposure to all of those toxins probably pushed me over the edge. Thanks, Dad. Anyway, so for the remainder of that summer, after I returned from Shell Lake Jazz Camp, I saved up my money. And I remember about this particular occasion that I think it was $666, because I used to make a joke that it was the number of the beast. And I saved up money to get that guitar. And I remember it was a Friday afternoon that I got paid, and I had enough money to go get that guitar. And I remember I'm a junior in high school. I don't know sales tax from whatever. I'm like, he told me it was $666, so I got it. So I'd said to my mom, we were going up to my folks' cottage that weekend. And so my mom, of course, now I totally understand, you know, it's a mom preparing the family to go up the weekend. The last thing she wants to do is take a pause to cause and go to the music store and get a guitar for boy. But I was like, Mom, I finally saved up enough money. We've got to go. So she was pissed. I don't want to go over there. I gotta pack and I gotta get ready to go. I'm like, guitar. So finally, she gives in. So we go over to Walker Music on North Avenue in beautiful Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, and we go in. And there's a guy that worked there, man. He was a strange dude. And he was always just kind of too cool for school. And he was like a Vulcan. He never showed any emotion. Like, can I help you? Like, yeah, Steve, I'm here to pick up that 335. Oh, cool. And then he gets out the invoice. He's got the guitar. It's this blonde. It's the first, I think they just had started remaking the dot neck 335 again. It was blonde, because I remember my instructor up, and he's like, get a dot neck if you possibly can. So like, well, I wasn't going to be an old dot neck because I couldn't afford that, but this brand new blonde 1983 dot neck guitar was going to be mine. And so Steve comes on and goes, here's your invoice. Because he's a Vulcan, he doesn't speak. Whatever. Do Vikings actually, or not Vikings, Vikings move their lips, but Vulcans, I'm not so sure. Anyway, so the guy comes out and he gives me the invoice, and there's sales tax. I'm like, you said it was $666. Again, I'm a junior in high school. I don't know my ass from a hole in the ground. My mom is furious. I'm not going to pay that extra money. I'm like, Mom, guitar! And so I had to pay her back, of course, but she paid the extra money for the sales tax. She was almost going to walk out. This is a highly tempestuous situation. So I remember getting that guitar. We went back home and we drove 3 hours up to Crivitz, Wisconsin, where my folks' cottage is. And I remember going into my little room up there and taking that guitar. I still remember the smell of that case. And I just remember reading the little brochure and playing that guitar and getting all the little accessories and just the smell. Oh, it was glorious. And that was to be my main guitar for the next several years. And as I went up to college, that was my main guitar. I did have other guitars. I still always had a Tele. I did sell the 68 Telecaster. I don't know why I ever did that. It was a stupid move, but I did sell it. But I got another Tele shortly thereafter. So go through college, and one of the years of my college, I think I was a junior maybe in college. The guys in my jazz department, we all got jobs at this theme park south of Minneapolis called Valley Fair. And Valley Fair was a place where, it was like a Six Flags type of a deal, but there were bands all over the place. There was like an R&B band, there was this band, there was a marching band that walked around. I got hooked up with this ensemble. It was me, a keyboard player that did like key bass and some primitive sequencing, and a drummer, and there were 3 girls out front, and we did a Whitney Houston / country medley. And it was heinous. Not that I'm judging, but it was money. So I did that during the day. And I couldn't play my 335 on the grounds because the park was sponsored by Yamaha. So we got to pick from a brochure whatever we wanted. And Yamaha made a pretty decent 335 knockoff. So I used that. And I actually did use a Yamaha G100 212 amp for quite some time. And so I just used one of those on the gig. And then at night I would go back to my apartment and see my delicious 335. And I also was playing through a Music Man RD112 at that point in time, a single 12 amplifier. I had JBL E112 in there. And that with a 335 was a delicious combination, I might add. So one day I was at a place called Pete's Guitars, which was, Pete's Guitar was kind of a Groons of the Great North. He was a guy that had all kinds of vintage stuff and was a vendor to the stars. Keith Richards and George Harrison and Clapton would all buy stuff from this guy. And he had weird hours, but somehow I figured out when he was open, and I went in there, and I remember I was hot for a super reverb at the time. So I'm playing a Strat through a super reverb. A buddy of mine is there with me, and I'm playing a little bit, and this guy is kind of looking over. I was talking to Pete, and they're hearing me play. And finally the guy comes over to me and he says, he goes, "Hey, are you in a band?" And I'm like, "Well, if playing at Valley Fair is a band, yes. But if it's not, no." I said, "I'm playing during the day at Valley Fair doing this thing, but in the evenings I'm off." He's like, "Well, I need a guitar player for Saturday night to cover the first set. My name's Pat Hayes, and the band's Lamont Cranston." Now, if anyone's familiar with the Twin Cities, Lamont Cranston was a huge blues band up there, and they opened up for the Stones and yada, yada, yada. They had a song called The Upper Mississippi Breakdown that was kind of a top 10 hit at some point somewhere. And so I knew who they were. And I was like, holy cats. I couldn't wait to tell my buddies who grew up in the Twin Cities that I was living with at this apartment about my gig, right? So I went in there and I said, "Hey, dudes, I got a gig this weekend." They're like, "Where? With who?" I said, "With Lamont Cranston." They're like, "No way." I'm like, "Way." So I remember I called with this girl I was going out with at the time. And I called her up and I said, "Hey, I got a gig this weekend." Now, this girl grew up in the Twin Cities. She would later become my wife. And I called her up and I said, "I got a gig this weekend. You want to go?" She's like, "With who?" I go, "Well, Lamont Cranston." And she said, "Who the beep is that?" And that's when I knew I was in love, because she could have cared less and didn't know. And yeah, that was great. Anyway, so I go and play this gig. Now, I should mention this. This is first time, Elijah, this is new information for one and all. I was actually still going out with this other gal back behind the cheddar curtain, right? So this is a cusp period of time, right? So I think enough time has passed that we can, the freshness date, the statute of limitations is over. So I was going out with this new gal, but I hadn't told the other one that it was kind of not going to happen anymore, because she was 6 hours away in another state, and I'm young and dumb, so whatever. So we get into, we do the gig. That night, I play the gig, and then a band from Milwaukee is also in town playing at another club. I go and I sit in with them. Good times. We go back to my apartment. There's a party time. Let the good times roll. And for whatever reason, I'm in the suburbs of Minneapolis. This is Burnsville, so it's not exactly like you're in, the heart of the city. So I stupidly leave my guitar and my amp in the car, my Chevy Citation. And we go in and we party, all that's well and good. Now, an interesting part of this story, ladies and gentlemen, is that I'd been avoiding this other girl's calls for a long time. And so finally, it's the morning after these gigs. I'm a little hungover, to be honest with you. I have to go back and play my Whitney Houston medley. The phone rings, and it's this gal on the phone. And I feel horrible, and I have to say, look, we should probably stop because, you know, you've graduated from school. I'm over here. I'm realizing, you know, what future do we really have? I say some BS. Is there someone else? Of course not. Because, you know, you're young, you're stupid, you're a cad, so you do all the worst things possible. Anyway, so after I dumped this girl on the phone, which was not the right thing to do, kids, take the 6-hour drive, be honorable, and do the right thing. I didn't do the right thing, okay? I'm going to admit that now. I didn't do the right thing. So I hang up the phone, and I go out to the car, and karma, ladies and gentlemen, dictates that I go out to my car and realize that my 335 and my Music Man RD112 have been stolen. How do I know it was karma? Because the DX7 that was in the road case in the back seat was still there. That wasn't mine. But my 335 and my Music Man amplifier were stolen. Moments after, I don't know when in the night, but I realized it moments after that I inappropriately ended relations with this gal that I'd been going out with for years on the phone. Now, granted, I'm 21 years old, 22. You're not exactly a rocket scientist at that point in time. As I like to say with boy kids, you got to keep them alive long enough for their brain starts to work. And I still was in the formative experience at that particular point in time. But the point is that if you want to keep your dream guitar 335 that you saved up working in a plastics factory that made me talk like that, and be a little bit deranged, and you want to keep that guitar for the rest of life, then don't dump your girlfriend on the phone after 3 years and expect your guitar to be in your car when you wake up that next morning. Let that be a lesson to you. 335 story out.